tell you there earlier was that if you have a cell phone, please turn it off or silence it, because anybody that their cell phone goes off while we're doing this program, you have to get up and dance. There will be severe consequences if that happens. I'm Butch Helton. I used to work for the city of Pigeon Forge in the events office and do this program. And we also want to thank the city of Pigeon Forge for putting this on. The great sponsors here at this event, Tennessee State Bank being the longest one. Great volunteers like Carol who come here and volunteer their time and help out. All the experts, people that are putting on programs this week, and vendors that are here said that 99.9% of them are not paid for what we do, so they come here and share with their knowledge. And we want to thank Mr. Ken Jenkins, who came up with this idea a long time ago, and he was great to work with. As you can see, we have had some changes on our panel here. Unfortunately, Miss Harriet Barrier was on the cruise and failed and suffered a severe head injury. And so keep her, thank you, John, thank you, my friend, appreciate it. Harriet is in a hospital in Cancun. We hope that they can move her back to the States maybe pretty soon. This happened fairly recently, and she is doing better, I can tell you that, from a link that we have some of our former classmates. My wife saw me, she keeps me up on all that. So Harriet is doing better, but I think she's going to kind of have a long road ahead of her, so please keep Harriet in your thoughts and prayers. And also, Jackie Barnes has a kidney infection, not feeling well, very much under the weather, so she's not going to be here today with us either. But I will introduce our panel real quickly to my right and your left. Here's Bill Bradley. Bill is here with us today. Right next to Bill over there is Jackie's brother, Bob Bradley. Bob Barnes. I knew Bob Bradley once. And down on the very end, I'm pretty sure his name is Randy Starkey.
A.K.A. Lonnie.
We all grew up here in Pigeon Forge. And the Pigeon Forge, I want to tell you a little bit about the Pigeon Forge we grew up in. It's a whole lot different from what you see here today. Where we're at here today, when we were all going up on the hill up here at Pigeon Forge Elementary, was just a big empty field. There wasn't anything here. A few years after that, they developed it, and Carlstown came in here. But Pigeon Forge was very, very different when we grew up here. It was still very much a small town, just a little place that you kind of passed through on your way to Gatlinburg. You know, we had a few motels, but we didn't really have much here in Pigeon Forge. It was kind of quiet. Everybody knew everybody, but it's a great place to grow up, wasn't it, guys? I mean, yeah, and it's still a great place. But I still live here and work here, and Bill lives in the city too. So we're still here. We're going to tell you about some things that we experienced growing up. But do keep Jackie and Harriet in your thoughts and prayers. We're sorry they couldn't be here with us today. They really, really, very much wanted to. So. Actually, we'll kind of start out. I'll have everybody just, if you would, I'll start and just tell them kind of where you grew up in Pigeon Forge here, and just a little bit. I grew up just right across the hill, and the city hall's up here now. It was the school when we were all growing up back then, especially in the 60s. The school came over here in, depending on who you believe, 52 or 53. Jerry Ware tells me 53, so I'll go with what Jerry said. And they had school there until the 89-90 school year. And that's when the city took it over and redeveloped the complex. That's how City Hall got to be up there. And it's been up there. There's a lot of changes going on in City Hall now. I went up for the part they've torn down now, the rooms A, B, and C, and the old gym. The old gym was about the only part of the school left that really resembled was from when we were there. But I grew up just right down from where City Hall is. I grew up about 2 blocks down the street. That's where I lived at in Pigeon Forge. And lived there until I was about 15 or 16. So, Bill, I know you lived a couple of different places, didn't you?
Well, yeah, we moved from outside of Gatlinburg, what a little community called Banner, where I was born. And then we moved down here on the highway at what they used to call the Enlow Bridge. That's the bridge coming in, separates Pigeon Forge and Sevierville right now. We moved down there and lived there for about, I guess 4 months, and our house burned. So then we moved. Dad bought a place up here, right across from Food City, up on the hill where the condos are at now. There used to be a Pickles service station, used to be down there on the highway. It used to be a Shell service station out there. We lived on the hill right there for 2 years. And then I moved to the north end of town, and Dad bought down on what they call the Pine Grove community. I don't know if anybody, some of these older heads might recognize that name, but it's down where the wilderness, the Smokies is now, on Sugar Hollow. And I still live in the house that I was raised in, on Sugar Hollow.
What year?
We moved there in he built that house in 64. I moved here and we moved in the city, well, it wasn't the city then, but we moved here in 60 and 61. I think the city was established in 61.
Incorporated in 61, yeah, that's right. And we moved here in 57 from Sevierville. We moved here to Pigeon Forge. And I remember when the incorporation was going on, I was only 6, but I remember these adults were all talking about something that seemed real important at the time. It didn't seem very important then, you know. And it was really a hot issue. It narrowly passed, that the city got incorporated. And Bob, you guys come from Gatlinburg originally, didn't you?
Yeah, my mother and father were both born in the park, and in 1920, my great-grandfather, Doc Connor, hiked from Collins Creek to Pigeon Forge and bought a 300-acre farm on the lower end and paid $15,000 cash in 1920. And he and my grandfather, my grandfather was Charlie Connor, and that's who they named Charlie's Bunyan after. But they came and built a farm down on that end of town, and that's where Connor Heights gets its name, and all that where US 441 sets was just wheat and stuff, and where the log cabin pancake house is, that was my grandfather's, or my great-grandfather's home, and then where the Smoky Shadows Motel, that was my grandfather's, and they lived there and worked, and even through the Depression and stuff, lived a pretty good life, and didn't realize that they didn't have certain things because they grew everything and raised it on the farm there. So my mother was born in the park, but and shortly thereafter they moved to Pigeon Forge, and the Connors and the Barneses have been here ever since. So we moved away and came back in 1962. And my cousin Everett Whaley had built a house on the river, and we bought that house and moved there where I'll give you a landmark that everybody will know. There was a bowling alley. There was a bowling alley there. And
later the skate room.
Yeah, so you know exactly where I'm talking about. No, wait a minute. There's a Cedar Lodge condominiums are there, and that's where my home place was.
That's where I remember y'all lived.
Yeah, we lived there from 62, and my dad, had lived in Gatlinburg, and honestly, the incorporation, and I'm being honest, you emulate the successful. Gatlinburg had formed a city, and Pigeon Forge decided that they'd do likewise and incorporate, and that's kind of how that idea was spawned, because they saw that Gatlinburg was going to have a better life by doing that, so Pigeon Forge did likewise. So I think it worked out for them. Okay.
And Randy, you were a Connor Heights boy. I remember where you lived. You grew up there.
Yep, I'm the only true. Rest of us immigrants, they come here. I was born in Pigeon Forge. I lived in Pigeon Forge. I never moved out of Pigeon Forge. So these are immigrants. I'm the only true blood here.
That's called indigenous.
See, he's using big words on me here. I was born up on Connor Heights in 1956. My mom and dad lived in there, and we rented a house for $25 a month. And, I just remember growing up, we lived around all the mid-calves up there, and boy, they was a tribe of them, I'm telling you. And they had a big cornfield. We'd get out there and throw dirt clods at each other and pull up the corn sticks and whoop each other with them, you know, and you'd slip out there and smoke your mom and daddy's non-filtered camels. That was sort of my life. We didn't have much. I can remember when Pigeon Forge started selling off down on the lower end where the Comedy Barn sits now. I think they was asking $10,000 an acre, and my dad said, any man be stupid to pay $10,000 for an acre of land. Well, I wish I could get a hold of my daddy right now and I'd beat him. If we had bought an acre of that land, why, it just, you know, now it goes for $10,000 an inch. So,
really. If you could even buy it, most of them will lease it to you.
Well, yeah, you couldn't buy nothing anymore.
It's late George Washington, who served on the city commission for a long time, told me where Taco Bell is now. There was a filling station there for years, and George bought that property. He told me in 1958 or 9, he gave $10,000 for it. And he said everybody in Pigeon Forge laughed at him and made fun of him and told him how crazy he was. And years later, like 40 years later, whatever it was, when the Taco Bell people came and bought it, they paid him $850,000 for it. He said, I think it was a pretty good investment. So that's just an example. And there where Huck Fenn's is now, I remember that's where Harold Butler's parents lived there. You know, there were houses all up and down the parkway, still in the 60s, and especially on River Road down through there. There were houses all up through there, you know, where people lived and everything. So it was very, very different. But it was a small community, and it was a great community. We're going to talk about a couple of things here. Bob might remember it. He's the younger one of our crew, but that happened during this time that impacted our lives and that we remember. And the first thing I ever remember of being serious or aware of happened in the fall of 1962. I was in Miss Pauline Householder's second grade class, and it was during the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Oh, yeah.
And she talked to us about it, and about the only thing I remember, she asked everybody, what would you do if there was like an attack or something on the school? What would you do? And I remember telling her, well, I'd probably just run home, you know, just right down the street. She told me that wasn't too good of an idea. And they would talk to us about getting down underneath our chairs, our school there, and staying down underneath it. Y'all remember that? You remember having that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Under that little desk.
That little desk, I don't know how that would have saved us, done us any good, but Miss Pauline was an interesting lady. She was my teacher again in the 7th grade. She's also a very talented artist here on the local level. You probably don't remember that, do you, Bob?
Oh, yeah, I remember Miss Pauline.
Yeah.
That teacher, she painted the old mill.
Yes.
And I can remember that, because I had a copy of it.
Yeah. Randy, you'd probably been in the 1st grade. Was you in Miss Hood's room in the 1st grade?
I was.
I was too. Yeah.
I remember Miss Pauline,
Who was you just talking about?
Household. Miss Pauline, that's what everybody called her.
Her being an artist, she worked with one day was in there and we was melting paraffin or something to do something with, and it caught on fire, and I remember she was running around beating it, and it just got worse. Well, all of us thought it was funny, but you know, we never realized she might have burnt school down and burned us up. It's like the fox with his tail on fire running through the cornfield, you know. And the funniest thing I'd ever seen, you know. That's what I remember. I never did crawl under my desk. I was too big. I didn't ever get under the desk.
Well, now the teacher I remember, because I remember several of them. One that comes to mind is Miss Nell McCarty. That'd be Laurie Jerry McCarty's mama. I had her in the 4th grade, and like most of you all out in the audience, we grew up back when if you done something wrong, you got whipped. That's putting it lightly. But anyway, Miss McCarter, give me one of the hardest whoopings I ever had.
Amen.
Oh, yeah, I told Jerry she whipped me when she did that.
Well, she was a pretty good sized lady.
She's a big woman. She's a
Big woman.
She was.
Big bottom.
Yeah, big mouth.
You didn't start that bad. But I didn't get my lesson one time. I was supposed to get, so she could bring tears to the eye. Needless to say. And that's just
Yes.
one of the many whippings I got. And the second one I got wasn't from a teacher, but was from cutting up in church. Back at the church where I went to, I'll not mention it, but anyway, we had a little water fountain in the classroom here on the left. And during the singing portion of the service, me and one of my buddies, we got to racing one another to the water fountain. Well, that went on through the song service. Well, when the preacher got up, we're still doing that. Well, the preacher happened to call us down from the pulpit. And that was the last straw there. My dad come down and sit down beside us. And needless to say, we didn't get up anymore. But after that, after the service was over, we was going home. Now, you got to remember, I come from a big family. There was 13 of us kids. Not at one time, but about 8 of us. And Dad only bought a pickup truck. So guess where we had to ride? Church, anywhere we went. But anyway, we were going home that night, and I was dreading. I knew something was coming, but I didn't know when. So we got home, and that's when we lived up here above Pickle Service Station, right here in Pigeon Forge. So I went. As soon as I got out of the truck and went in the bathroom, locked myself in the bathroom. And I stayed in there. My mom got to hollering at me and said, "Son, come on out here and take your medicine." I thought, "What? Take my medicine?" Well, they gonna give me something, but it won't hurt. That's what I thought. So I unlocked the door and come out there, and when he grabbed me, I remember my mom saying, "Lloyd, you need to quit now, you're going to kill him." That was just the second one I got.
I bet you didn't act up in church no more.
No, I didn't get thirsty in church no more.
When we went to Pigeon Forge Elementary up here in the 60s, we only had 2 principals. The first one was Frank Marshall. And then he left in about 63 or 64, somewhere along in there. His replacement was a man named Ralph Fitzpatrick, and he finished out the rest of the 60s and the early part of the 70s. And I think after he retired, John Dale Trotter, a lot of you remember John Dale, he was the principal there. For a while, just up here at the school, we had the round building. I remember when they were building the round building, I was just a little kid, And the other event that happened that formed our lives. A lot of times your parents will tell you things in their childhood growing up. I remember my parents used to always say it was when the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor. That's what they would talk about. For us, it was November the 22nd, 1963, which was 60 years ago recently, when President Kennedy was assassinated. And I remember it like it was yesterday. I was just right up here on the hill, out near the ball field, shooting marbles with a bunch of guys, and an older kid had a transistor radio. Remember, we had those in the 60s, went around with your head. It's one radio of us can hear anymore. But he told us that President Kennedy had been assassinated. And shortly thereafter, our teacher came out and got us. Amaryllis Deaton was her name. I remember it to this day. And she was crying. And then we knew something was going on. Something bad was going on. And she took us back in the classroom and explained to us what had happened and everything. And it was...
I believe I was leaving golf class.
You remember class? Yeah. Do you remember that, Bob? Or is that
I remember, because it was so profound.
Yes.
It affected everybody's life.
Yes.
And I mean, the world stood still for 3 or 4 days while all that, the funeral procession and all that stuff. And we were fortunate to have a black and white TV, and I can remember, I don't know that there was anything else on TV.
No, there wasn't. There wasn't.
You know, but I mean,
Yeah.
it was a where were you when moment.
Very much so. Very much so. Randy, what do you remember about that?
Well, we didn't have a TV, so we had to depend on people to draw pictures, and I'd look at the picture. You know. I do remember in school and the people crying, and I was young enough to where I knew something had happened, but I didn't grasp it, you know, till I got older, what had really happened and how much it affected the world, and still does today. You know, as a kid, you see things. I remember the funeral procession and the little boy standing there saluting it, and everybody, all the old adults were crying, and I thought, you know, I just didn't get it. But I get it now. I understand today what it was and what it meant, and it did make a big difference. But I'll just be honest, it didn't affect me a lot then. I was just too young to really know what was going on.
It was hard to fully grasp it, but we
Yeah.
knew something bad.
Yeah, I knew it's bad. I just couldn't wrap my head around exactly what. You know, sometimes you can't see the big picture till later on. Well, later on, and when it went into the service, and that rung a bell to me. You know, I left home and served 4 years, and I appreciate the flag and where I live by doing that right there. And I was like Dorothy. I clicked my heels. I never was so glad to get home. And when I lived here, before I went in, I didn't think much about this place, that it was anything special, till I left and seen some of the rest of the world. Now I know why everybody comes here.
Yeah.
And it ain't for Dolly. Well, no, that's a lie. It is for Dolly.
Be careful what you say.
I know. I'm sorry. I take that back. Don't nobody write that down. I didn't mean to say that out loud. A lot of it's for Dolly, but there's lots of other reasons. We live in a beautiful place, and it has changed over the years. I remember coming through Pigeon Forge. We had motorcycles, and we'd jump the mediums after 5 o'clock because that's when the policeman went home. We just had one. And he got off at 5 and he went home, so we'd get our motorcycles and we'd jump the mediums. Man, it was a blast. I mean, you know, a lot of fun.
It was a small force.
Yeah.
Small force. Now, Randy brought up TV. You all really had a TV.
No.
No?
No,
You did?
I didn't get a TV till I was in the 2nd grade.
Oh, okay.
I mean, we finally did get a TV,
Members
and
Butch.
we could only watch like the Porter Wagner show, things like that. And then Mom say that we've got to turn that thing off; it needs to rest. I never did understand that. We had to let that TV rest.
Let me ask y'all this. Did any of you have color TV? We never had color TV till, I don't know, in the 70s, I guess.
When I can remember when Dolly was on TV, and some of her cousins and stuff worked for my dad, and they'd come to the house at 6 o'clock in the morning so they could watch the Cass Walker's show and watch them perform. Then later on, when she went to Nashville, we got a color TV, and doggone Porter Wagner and the Wilburn brothers and all this stuff. Man, that guy's got a red shirt on. That's pretty neat.
I remember when Ted Reagan first started working on TVs, and this guy, I can't remember his name. He had a guy, his name was Sonny something. He helped him. And my dad knew him, and he used to tell my dad all the time, because they had color TVs over there, he'd say, "Son, you ain't see nothing, you see Bonanza in color."
I remember the Reagans lived up on the hill above us on Connor Heights and owned Reagan's Restaurant, Ralph Reagan. And of course they had quite a bit of money, they was well off, and they had a little girl, and I found out they had a color TV, and I wanted her to be my girlfriend. Well, she wouldn't be my girlfriend. So I could go up there on Saturday, I wanted to watch cartoons in color. I had never seen Bugs Bunny or anything in color. They look a lot different in black and white than they do in color. But I tried and tried to get her to be my girlfriend. But she would let me come up there once in a while and watch the TV.
Well, the thing about the black and white TVs back in the early 60s and in 60s. Y'all, if you're lucky, you got 3 channels.
Yeah, if he's
Maybe.
lucky, if he's lucky.
And to get them 3 channels, somebody had to go out and turn the antenna.
Yeah.
It always snow on one of the channels or two.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Son, go out there and turn that.
Turn that just a little bit more. It's cleared up. Turn it a little bit more. Turn it back a little bit more. Don't go back. You went too far. Yeah.
And see, they're not doing that when the weather's good.
They're not smart as my family.
It's a little more challenging.
They're not smart as my family. We put ours right outside the window. All you have to do is reach your hand through the window. You don't put it where you can't get it. Don't put it where you can't get to it.
And if the president come on, he's on every channel. You had to watch him, you know. So, but yeah, I remember my grandmother lived next door to us. Mama Helton had an old RCA TV that sat there, and she watched Kaz Walker's Farm and Home Hour every morning. I mean, she turned it on religiously and watched it every morning. So yeah, TV was a lot different back then too. Fort Ware. They used to take us there sometimes on school trips and everything. It's down here where Professor Hacker's and Hardy's is now, to give you an idea of where it's at. It was an interesting place. 2 things I remember about it the most, I guess, was the elephants. Elephant. He had one elephant. And the snake pit. Remember the snake pit?
Yeah,
the guy would put this suit on, and he'd walk in among all those snakes and get them and pick them up and everything.
Take them over and milk them.
Take it and milk them, some of them, you know, and everything. But he'd walk out there among the snakes. So they used to take us there sometimes from the school for field trips.
Yeah, you wasn't that far from the school.
No, it wasn't far from the school.
They walk you down there.
No, it was.
You could see all the wild animals.
It changed hands over the years and evolved into different things, you know, and everything. But it was an interesting place to go there and see. You guys have any thoughts or anything about Fort Ware?
That makes me think of, we had Fairyland.
Yeah, I remember Fairyland's down in the south end of town. I'm your end of town.
Yeah. And of course the pottery, but the thing that I used to find interesting was when the pottery was working. You know, there was a cannery.
Yes.
There,
yes.
and people. I can remember when we worked at the cannery, and cannery. What the crap is a cannery? I had no idea that they were, making food and canning food.
So it was, but it was an interesting place. Fort Ware was. Another thing that started in 1961. Dollywood, as most of you know now, started in 1961 as Rebel Railroad. And when I don't know if it was the first year or the second year they were there in business, I got to go, and it was a lot of fun. They gave you a little Rebel cap, and they gave you a cap pistol, and the Yankees attacked the train, and you got to shoot at them with a cap pistol. And it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it, shoot them little Yankees,
He still got his cat pistol.
It was Rebel Railroad from 1961 to 69, and in 1970 it became Gold Rush Junction, and in 1971 they shortened it for some reason just to Gold Rush. I don't know what the deal was there. And then it was Silver Dollar City from 1976 to 85, and then it became Dollarwood. So it evolved over the years. When it was Gold Rush Junction, they had the big log flume ride. Remember that? That was pretty neat, which came from the 1964 World's Fair, was its claim to fame. And oh man, it just drinks you when you bottomed out. You get soaked. It was fun, kids loved it. So
I just remember when it was Rebel Railroad, when it was first Rebel Railroad, they had a train engine on either side of the entrance up there.
yeah.
They had one where Dollywood Lane cuts across now. They set 2 train engines out there, and you drove between them to get over to Rebel Railroad. Now Dollywood I think they just have one locomotive out there.
They did have that one. And the train ride was about it. They didn't have much else. Once you rode into, they
Yeah,
had a little
well,
saloon,
they
they
had
had a little
saloon and gunfights.
and a gunfight, and they had a few little things scattered around there, but it was nothing like it is today, and it grew over the years. And when it became Gold Rush Junction, Art Modell, who used to own the Cleveland Browns, purchased it. He owned it then, and he I guess he built it up quite a bit. And the only thing I remember significantly from that was he used to sometimes bring Cleveland Browns football players in to help promote each year and everything, and you would get to meet some of them sometimes. So that was a lot of fun. And eventually it evolved on. They built the swimming pool in maybe the late '60s or early '70s. I remember when we were in high school going over there to the swimming pool. That would have been early '70s then, you know. But it changed a lot over the years. Of course, now it's just, oh my goodness, you know, it's international, it's worldwide. Everywhere I've traveled, when I'd go on the IFA trips, I would talk to people from China who said, "Oh yeah, Dolly's place." You know, they knew about Dollywood. They knew what it was all about here. So, but it's evolved over the years. Two other places that were on the south end of town down there that were famous. That I'm sure all of you spent a lot of time there. Was the Midway Drive-In Theater and Remax Drive-In Restaurant, which was right in front of it, right there at it. So Bill's got an old
This program is from 1967, from a Midway Drive-In, and it's got the price to get in. Of course, it doesn't matter how many was in the vehicle, you only paid $1, and the rest of everybody else hid down behind the seat and in the front. This pulled back in, but didn't have $1. You had to scrape together and just get $1, and that's pretty much paying for the vehicle to get in. Everybody else could sneak in. But just to give you an idea of what was going on then, some of the movies, Clint Eastwood's Fistful of Dollars, and Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, and John Wayne's War Wagon.
There you go. I watched that the other night on TV. But you guys got any thoughts about that? I will say about the Remax Drive-In restaurant that the McCarter family had. It was Bill McCarter, who was English's brother, right? That had, okay, yeah,
That was right here is a picture of Remax. That was my first public job. I think I was about 12 or 13-year-old when I started there, washing dishes by hand. You didn't have no dishwasher back then. You had a 3-bay sink that you had to wash dishes by hand. And that was my first job in Pigeon Forge.
They got the name Remax from Reagan and McCarter.
Yeah.
Or McCarter, excuse me, Reagan and McCarter. Was how they came up with that. His wife was a Reagan. Is that the way? Was she not? I think is how I always heard they came up with the name. That was a unique name.
Yeah.
Not to be associated because they spell it differently from what the real estate agency does. It's a totally different thing. But it was what you guys are. I always tell people this day. I think it's probably about the best hamburger I ever had in my life at Remax, and at the drive-in theater. There weren't, you know, any movie theaters around here in Sevier County at the time. It was about the only place you could go. So you saw everything.
I'll tell you what makes me think of Remax every time I go to Sevier. There's a lady down there that works at Lowe's in Sevier. Her name is Doc. What's her last name?
Oh, Doc Fox.
Fox,
yeah.
Doc Fox used to work at Remax. Worked outside. She was the lady that brought you food and stuff to you in the early 60s. I don't know how old. She must be 200 years old now.
I think she's still with us too. She's still working
at Lowe's.
Yeah.
You ever go to Lowe's down in Sevier? And she hadn't changed in appearance. I mean, yeah, she's older, but her appearance hadn't changed much.
He had a crush on her, don't he?
I sure did.
Hey, I tell you what, Chuck Wagon steak basket is the best thing in the world. Hey, let me back up something here about Dollywood. In between the first of it in Dolly, you had red maples. I don't know if anybody remembers red maple in his beard. And he had this mule he'd haul over there, and he'd haul the mule with him to Dolly, or to, I don't call it Dollywood, Silver Dollar City. And he was called the prospector, and he'd walk through the place and talk to people, and, you know, and he was just no country boy. Well, one day, he lived down in Sevierville, and his truck broke down. He had that mule with him. So me and my dad was going that way, and we stopped down there and asked him if he needed a ride or anything. And he said, well, you know, my dad didn't really want to give him a ride. He just wanted to help him. But he said, yeah, I'll get a ride. My dad's name was Lloyd. He said, yeah, I'll get a ride from you. And Dad said, what are you going to do with that old mule? He said, don't worry about the mule. He said, you just go on, the mule will be fine. So we get in the truck and we're going, and Daddy pulls out, and I'll be darned if that mule didn't start following us. Well, he said, Brad, that mule's following us. I said, what are we going to do? He said, don't worry, Lloyd, just go on. The mule will be fine. Well, Daddy got about 10 miles an hour, and the mule's right behind us. And he said, well, okay. So he got about 15. Here comes the mule. The mule just kept coming. And he said, Red, what the mule? He said, don't worry about the mule. Just go on, Lloyd. Well, Daddy got about 25 miles an hour, and the mule's right there. And he said, Red, said, that mule's right behind us. Said, his tongue's hanging out. He said, what side of its mouth is it hanging out of? He said, it's right-hand side. He said, stay in this lane. He's fixing to pass. Now, all that ain't true, but Red and all that is true, and he was quite a character. That's things I remember a bit about being a kid. And let me back up one more thing about the TV. You know, at the time, I tell you what, I hated that I didn't have a TV. But it made me a better person because I was outside playing, doing stuff, and I wasn't stuck in the house watching that TV like kids are today. They miss out on things that we done as a kid. We could play all day on a dirt bank with one little car. We found ways to amuse ourselves and get out in the woods and see things and do things and go down here at the river and fish a little or whatever and skinny dip or... No, let me take that back. We didn't skinny dip. Not me.
Be careful now.
Yeah. Well, just go swimming. If you could dodge all the stuff coming down from Galtenberg from a sewer plant, you had to dodge it. It was just a different time, a different place, a different world.
It was.
And my grandson's over here, and he'll never know that. All he's going to know is video games and being at Walmart, you know. just a whole different life.
Yeah, what some of y'all, if you're not from here, and the one that's from here, back in the early 60s and through most of the 60s, Pigeon Forge wasn't nothing but cornfields and wheat fields. I mean, you had a motel here. I don't know how many.
I can remember the Forge Motel by Food City and Pigeon River Court down there that Leroy Maples had.
Flower Garden Court, and then they built Mountain Skies, opened up in I think '68 on the other that the Colliers built, and then Norma Dan, you know, with Dan and his family down there, and that was about it.
But we really didn't realize. I mean, us growing up as kids here in this community, it's more of a community than it was a town.
It was.
I mean, everybody knows everybody, and most of us live in walking distance to school. Yeah. I mean, now, about all the parents take their kids to school. I think there's very few rides the bus. I don't know why they run buses anymore. But anyway, back then, families, you had a one-car family. Everybody is either a truck or a car, and that's what the family had. Now, you can go by, most families got 5 or 6 cars sitting in the driveway. But back then, it was a treat to have a vehicle.
It was different, yeah. And I knew some that didn't even have cars.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, and I knew a lot of people didn't have a phone. You know, that was
that was something that, you know, back then, you could dial anybody's phone number by the last 4 digits. You just dial 5262, and you knew who was gonna be on the other end.
Saying that about phones, does anybody remember being on the party line? There you go, there you
I can
go.
remember at the house
Yeah.
picking up, and my Aunt Ruth would be talking.
Yeah, you
about
did,
it.
yeah.
I'd say, Mom, Aunt Ruth's still on there. Well, just microphone.
We lived, my grandmother, Helton, lived next door to us. She was on it, and she just said, now, honey, you're going to have to get off the phone for a while, you know, I've got to use it, you know, so yeah. And we had a 3-party line. We had a 3-party. Now, I've heard of 4 and 5, and even some people would say they had a 7-party line. I don't know how in the world you'd ever get to talk to anybody on a 7-party line, you know, but,
You probably had a cell phone, didn't you, Randy?
A tin can with a string tied on it. It's all right, long string didn't break. Hey, I want to say something about Fort Wire. I'm going back. They let me talking now.
okay, that's all right.
I got thrown in this. I won't talk. I'm just going to tell you. Fort Wire, they had a gorilla down there, and it got out one time. We was in school. That was one time I was able to get under my desk. I just want to say that. I got under my desk then.
Well, I thought it was the elephant got out. Didn't the elephant get out?
No, Bobcat or something.
See, there ain't nobody got their story
There was
straight.
always something that escaped down there at Fort Wire. But,
You remember Jungle Cargo?
yeah, which, Fort Wire became
Yeah,
Jungle
Jungle
Cargo.
Cargo, that's what I was gonna
And it was under several different managements there and everything. You know, but yeah, like Bill said, it was such a small town then, and everybody knew everybody, and most people you were probably related to one way or the other, if you weren't. So, first jobs. First
Well, I'm gonna give mine.
You gotta give yours away.
My first job, I guess, was working at Z Buddha's Pancake House.
Oh,
Because
yeah,
I could walk,
yeah,
you know,
yeah.
it wasn't that far,
Yeah, you're
and
still
I could
close
walk
to it.
over there even in the
Yeah,
rain.
yeah. What about you, Randy?
My first job was Zolder's Motel in Gatlinburg. My mom cleaned rooms up there for 38 years, and so I was 10 years old, and she hauled me up there, and I was a little old chubby, and I had to have black pants and a white shirt, because I got to I was the bellboy. I got to take them to the room and drive a golf cart.
Yeah.
Son, you talk about being big time, I was big time. Well, I would take them to the room, you know, and I'm a little short boy, got this country accent. I had to tell them how to use the air conditioner, do this, do that. And every time they'd say, Randy, can you tell us that again? Well, I thought, man, these stupid people, they don't know nothing. Don't know how to use an air conditioner, coffee maker. And there'd be a life and everything, and they'd give me a quarter, and, you know, and I'd spend that before I get back down to the office. For a long time, I thought they was laughing at me, but I guess they wanted to hear me talk. That's what it was. They wanted to hear this country slang. Now, me, I sound like a disc jockey to myself, so, you know, but, you know, they'd come back year after year, and when I worked there like 3 years being the bellboy, they wanted to know where I was at after that. Where'd old Randy go? Where's Randy at? I said, well, they got him a better job. I was washing dishes then. Moved up.
You moved up, hadn't you?
Moved up, yeah,
What
on the east
was a
side.
motel? I remember Polly Thornton, there was a row of motels on the right coming into Pigeon Forge there. And she went down and rented rooms for them. I don't remember who owned it, but I remember going down there and sitting with her. We'd sit out there every night for people coming through needed the room.
Yeah.
And this was about 1965, 6, somewhere around there. She rented rooms for $8 a night. I remember the price because that stuck in my head.
Yeah.
But it was $8 a night. I thought, who can afford
Who
it?
can afford the big money?
Big money.
Yeah, $8 a night. Man, I worked one summer. It would have been about 1968. I was 13. I worked for Harold Butler at his store there, just buying groceries and everything, you know, and doing all that. That was fun. And the next year, 69, I went to work at Apple Tree Inn and was a busboy there. And the thing about working for Harold was you saw everybody in Pigeon Forge. They come in there. One story I'll tell real quick. I hope nobody's related to him. His name was Tip Robertson. He was a school teacher. And he was a notorious typewriter. And they had an RC machine out front. RCs cost a dime. Okay, they cost 10 cents. They went up to 15 cents. And he came in, and his complaint was that he had been putting his dime in that machine over and over and over again, and he wasn't getting no RC out of it. And they said, well, it's went up 15, it's 15 cents now. He said, what? They said, well, it's 15 cents, and he said, you tell Harold Butler, it'll be a cold day in hell before I'll pay 15 cents for an RC. And when I worked for Garnet Cole run Apple Tree in back then when I worked for, two things real quick about her. I was standing there, we getting ready to, had that big old thing up there where you have to clock out, and I'm standing there, it's like 2 minutes till I get off, and I'm getting ready to clock out. I hear, Butch Helton? Yes, ma'am. Clock watcher will never get nowhere in this world. Yes, ma'am. The other one was, they had the patio unit. Remember where the tree was out there and the patio unit out there? And you wait, so you go out there and work. Well, you had to carry everything out there and set it up. They had a big thing. They had water in it because, they give you water when you sit down at your table. Well, then this other guy, Cecil Ward, the late Cecil Ward, I'm ashamed to say, but we filled it up, and when we got in the front, we see a fly floating in it. So we're standing there looking at it, and you could tell what we were both thinking, and we're just thinking like that. And about that time, Garnet come up behind us, and she said, would you get a drink of water out of there? I said, no ma'am, I wouldn't. And she said, don't never serve anybody anything you wouldn't drink or eat yourself. So clean that out. And we said, yes ma'am. So I learned a lot about things like that doing that. So, saw everybody. Now we've got it made here in the city. They come pick our trash up and everything, once a week and everything. But boy, back then, you just
everybody burnt their trash out back.
Sure did.
Yeah.
And
the backyard.
I'm a youngster. I can remember the guys that drove the garbage truck we had, because my grandmother's house was on the south end there, and I'd walk down to Granny's, and when Tate and I'm trying to think, Tate Myers and Sam Coffey were on the garbage truck, they'd let me catch a ride, and I'd ride back down River Road. Boy, I mean like a big dog, I'd ride on the garbage truck. So that, it doesn't take much to please a simple mind. But I'm just saying, the city's been in the garbage business a pretty long time.
Did they make it up on Connor Heights, Randy?
No. No, we either beat it, burned our trash, or ate it. He was the one that showed him how to hang off the side of the garbage truck like this.
Yeah, hang on to the mirror.
Yeah, he's the one that taught him that.
Yeah.
No, Connor Heights never was in the city. I mean, we didn't. It wasn't incorporated in the city at that time. So when you turned off right there, it turned into a dirt road. Now that was it. Gravel. No blacktop. So.
Yeah, that down on Sugar Hollow, where I live now, down below Community Center. I don't believe that was annexed till in the 90s.
No, I believe it's late 80s, maybe the early 90s, before the city went down that far. No, the city wasn't that big. The city limits there were much smaller than they are now.
It was from the Enlow Bridge to the bridge there at Connor Heights, and it was just like a block on either side. I mean, we lived on River Road and we were in the city limits, but like where Randy's talking about, as far as being off the parkway, it wasn't far off the parkway, but it wasn't in the city limits. And they just, when we first got started, it was just a gun barrel, 3 miles from bridge to bridge, and about a block on either side, and that was it. That was the city.
Yeah. It was a lot different, wasn't it?
I'll tell you when we started making hay. Back in the late 70s, early 80s, Z Buddha come to town. And we'd always heard about the Myrtle Beach or Florida or something other, the ocean. Never did get to go. Well, I did one time, and I'll tell you about that. But anyway, he brought the Mountain Ocean. We used to have a Mountain Ocean down here with a red roof mall. I guess some of you old people remember that. And when that come in, I guess kudos on them. They thought they'd get in on the bandwagon, and they put in a water park. The old water park, which is down on the lower end, below Wires Valley Road. That operated for I don't know how many years. And then Tommy Bartlett come in, and he built a man-made lake down there in front of our house, and had a water circus. And then we had people come from Hawaii or
Oh, yeah.
Porpoise
Porpoise Island.
Porpoise Island, yeah.
all these business people were bringing the ocean to us.
Yeah, bring it all to us. See, Buddha, Englishman Carter used to tell a good story about him when they extended the road on through, and which is now Tister Lane. He said that Z. Buddha called him and told him that that was probably the biggest waste of the public's money that they ever used, and there probably wouldn't be more than a couple of dozen people every day using it. He was a character. He was the mayor over in Morristown for a while. He had several businesses here in Pigeon Forge. He was a character, and then the big campground that they had up around the hill. Now Dan Connor's brother had developed that, didn't he? Yeah, and built that and everything. That was in the south end of town, right next to the Midway, just right up through there, you know. So it was, yeah.
And they called it the Midway because it was midway through town. You know, it was, which I guess it was probably mile marker 1 or 2 or whatever. I mean, but you know, the whole town was 3 miles long.
And like Bill said, it was $1 to get in. They used to have bingo night. Remember they had bingo night? Yeah. My sister won a radio one time playing it was a lot of fun, you know. But it was such a small town. It was such a small. Let's talk a little bit about. Let's see. Okay, we'll leave time for a few questions. Who wants that? But anybody remember Fire Day? Remember Fire Day, Randy, when they take us down there to the Sevier County Fair? About the only time I rode a bus, because I walked to school and lived right down below the school. And you could go to the fair and got in free, didn't you? But students got in free, and you could spend most of the day there and everything, you know. And it was a lot of fun. And the fair was even, if you've been to the Sevier County Fair lately, it was even smaller then. You know, I mean, but I guess to a kid, to me, it seemed like a big deal. You know, it was a lot of fun to go down there and do that. You know, and
that's the only reason I look forward to going to school.
Yeah, just go to the fair.
Just go to the fair.
Ride back on the bus. You know, we wouldn't used to ride many things to spin. Well, half the kids get sick and they'd throw up on the bus. And going back, and of course it'd be 90 degrees. And, that's what I remember. I don't remember much about the fire.
You wasn't on up, was you?
Yeah, I was.
I wasn't too much of a A.B. student when I went. It wasn't. If it hadn't been for Butch and Harriet, not here, and Jackie, and I didn't copy off of them, I just wouldn't make it to school.
We'll discuss one more thing, then we'll see if any of y'all will ask us any questions or anything. But I want to thank these guys for coming here today. Favorite teachers that might have stood out for you. For me, I have several I'll mention real quickly. My first grade teacher, Miss Reva Hood, was just as I look back at it now, was a wonderful teacher. And my sisters and I, there was just about like a year and a half or 2 years, we all started school one right after the other. When I was in the 3rd grade, Michelle was in the 2nd, she was in the 1st grade, and we all had her as a teacher. She was just a wonderful, wonderful teacher. We were so lucky to have her. And I guess when I got in high school, Miss Julia Householder, who a lot of you know, that taught me American history and American government, was an outstanding teacher. It was a big influence on me, and it helped me a lot. Anybody stand out?
Mine was Miss Ruby Davenport.
Oh,
Here, a picture of her. Our class was in the 6th grade. I guess she had the biggest impact on my life.
He's Billy Bradley back then.
But yeah, I guess if I had a favorite teacher, Miss Ruby Davenport would be mine.
All right.
Bill Davenport's mom.
She's good. She's
Oh,
good.
yeah,
Bob?
she's a jewel. Well, to me, it would be hard to have any roots in Pigeon Forge and not make mention of Reba Hood. And Miss Hood taught my father how to read, taught me how to read, and taught my second daughter how to read. So, I mean, that's a pretty big legacy.
Yeah, it is.
But you know, Miss Ruby, Miss Betty Large, Miss Gobble,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, and Nell McCarter, they were people that were going to impact your life. They were the guardrails of society. They kept us in the lines, and there was no parent that would go to school and say, you know, hey, you whipped my boy, how come you did so-and-so? Because back then, if you got one at school, boy, you were getting one when you got to the house. No questions asked. I mean, you know, Mom, I got a whooping today. Miss Nell whooped me because I cussed at lunch or something like that. You know, okay, well, that's good. Just wait till your dad gets home. You know, so, you know, as far as favorite teacher goes, in this community, it would be difficult to pick with the likes of Miss Hood and Miss Leela and Betty Large and Miss Ruby. I mean, some great
ladies, great educators.
Yep.
Randy, how about you?
Well, it didn't let me nobody talk about it. Nell McCarter, she never was my teacher, but she paddled me one time. And I had respect for that woman. I never seen such a bicep on anybody. Convicts used to come to school and talk to us, you know. Tell us about don't be like me, don't do this. Well, me and old Dwight Pack, we was setting up the gymnasium up there, and old Dwight used to be able to hold his nose and blow, and he could make bubbles come out the side of his eye. Hey, I know it don't sound like much, but when you about, you know, 4th, 5th grade, it was amazing.
That's an amazing time.
Well, there's 2 little girls up there, and we just had them giggling, going on, while the convicts was talking to us. And when it was over, we come down through, and I remember going out of the gym, and they said, that one and that one, right there. Well, it was me and Dwight. And I thought, hey, we won a prize, door prize. Our teacher, Miss Gobble, she didn't whoop nobody, but they took me and him down to Miss McCarter. Well, that was the older grade than us, and the first thing was being in front of that room getting embarrassed because we got whooped in front of them. But the worst thing was that Dwight got his first, and when I heard him hit him, and that crack and that look on his face, I fell apart. I'm not going to survive this, and I'm telling you what. 3 licks, and I got home, and we just got a bathroom put in our house. We'd not had an indoor bathroom, and there was a mirror in there. So I remember I turned around and looked at the mirror, and they wouldn't a blood vessel, my hind end wouldn't bust. It's the honest truth. And I hid myself from my mom. Not like today. Let's sue them and take everything to school. You're right. If I told Mom, she'd have got the hickory and put stripes on top of them bruises. But I'll tell you what, next time them convicts come, I heard every word they said.
Does anybody want to ask us anything? We might have. Yes, Ruth, go ahead.
I got a little story about Rebel Railroad.
Yes.
My brother-in-law, Jerry Miller, worked there, and he rode the horse. And they were always doing these practical jokes, and he got a big bucket of horse manure. And he was going to throw it on the conductor. Oh, it went all over the passengers. He got fired. Oh, boy. The question I want to ask you. Years ago, and I think it was in the 40s, and that was before my time, and I know it's before your time. But I heard that Gatlinburg and Sevierville wanted to use the main road out there and build an airport.
I've heard that too, yes.
Is that true?
And as far as I know, yes, that is true.
That was one of the concerns of the people that lived here at the time.
Right.
If you go on Pigeon Forge's website, I've got a copy of it here that but they got a history of things, and it tells a little bit about that in there. But the citizens or the people that live here had heard talk that Pigeon or Sevierville and Gatlinburg were trying to put an airport there. And they was not going to let them do that.
Last thing I want to say.
Yes.
When it was Rebel Railroad, I'm older than you guys. I was a
surely not.
teenager. And they had Miss Penthouse in Gatlinburg promoting the park down here. Miss Penthouse.
You mean like Penthouse Magazine?
Yes.
I don't remember that. How did we miss that, Randy?
I don't remember it neither, but I'd win if I'd known shit. I didn't know nothing about that one. That was cute.
Go ahead.
I'm curious to know you all have considered a great program and have a great life growing up here. How do you as old-time residents feel about how it's changed? The traffic and all the problems.
What his question is growing up here like we did, how do we feel about the Pigeon Forge that's here now? I'll be real brief. I still think it's a great place to live and to work. I don't want to live anywhere else. It has changed, but our whole world has changed since then. I mean, it's not like it was in the 60s anymore. And, progress is always kind of a double-edged sword, but I look at what we have now, the community center and all the great facilities that the city has. When we were growing up here, we didn't have nothing. I mean, we played baseball up here on the hill. We had to beg to get equipment, and have a facility to do it. So when you balance it, I think, this is strictly my opinion, because I used to work for the city, but is the benefits that we're deriving from it far outweigh what it is now. We have an extremely low tax rate. If it's any lower, I don't know how it can go any lower, but I think it is a kind of a double-edged sword, but I think overall it's great. It's a great place.
Yeah, all y'all, whether you're from here or wherever you're from, I think everybody needs to be proud of where they were raised, no matter where you are, because that's part of who you are. That's what makes up who you are. My wife used to, she's from California, she also used to tell me, she said, you're a product of how you were raised. Well, that's very true. And we, up here, and the rest of y'all lived here and born here, we're very fortunate to come from a small community like Pigeon Forge. I'm very thankful, very blessed that I got to be raised in a community of this sort. And like Butch said, you don't it's not the same place we grew up in. I mean, tourists, you've got 10, 12 million people come through here a year now. And I've blocked my driveway off, keeping people pulling in. But, I don't know of any place else I was fortunate enough to get to live and work in Hawaii for 2 years. My work took me over there. And I'll tell you this one little tidbit. When I first went over there, they asked me where I was from. I said, Pigeon Forge. Well, I'd never heard of Pigeon Forge. And I said, well, you know Dollywood. Oh, yeah, I know where Dollywood is. I said, well, that's right in the middle of Pigeon Forge.
Bob?
But anyway, I think we'd all agree that we're very blessed to be raised in a community of this sort. And I'm proud to be from Pigeon Forge.
Well, you have to look at the alternative, okay? We are relatively crime-free. We live in a place that we do have resources, and more importantly, what you have to ask yourself is, what do you need? How greedy are you? What do you have to have? What's it going to take to make you happy? I'm happy as a pig in slop, sitting in traffic, waiting to get to my business, because I've done it for 33 years. And all I'm getting at is if you're unhappy and you live here in Pigeon Forge, then go find happiness. I found my happiness. My happiness is here, and I'm not going to trade it with anybody because I know what it takes. When you get up and your feet hit the ground, what it takes to make you happy isn't necessarily where you live or where you work. You find happiness. Happiness is in here. And if you have happiness in here, nobody can steal that. No thief's going to take my happiness. So those values are things that we learned here because there was so many people. They talk about the village raises the kid. Well, that's never been more true than it is in this town. Because if we got out of line and somebody's mom saw us, they'd crack us in the head and say, if your mother was here and she saw you acting like that, she'd take a belt to you. And they'd be right. So all I'm getting at is we grew up in a great place to grow up, in a great community with a lot of people that helped us be better citizens. It wasn't just mama and daddy. My dad died when I was a little boy. But all the men in this community did things to help me. Harold Butler and Dot. I mean, there was tons of people that did things to help me. So I have to be thankful for what I've got. And that is largely due to this town.
Randy?
Well, I thank God I was born here. And I thank God He's kept me here. And I wouldn't want to be nowhere else. The only thing I do want, I've tried to get the city to give me a permit to sit down at the end of the parkway with a bucket and just ask $1 from everybody that comes through. Just $1. For just 1 year, 10 million, you understand? It is a great place to live. I wouldn't want to live nowhere else. And when I was in the service, I got to travel a lot and see a lot of other places. Ain't no better place than here. This is home.
We'll take one more real quick. Yes, ma'am.
Was there not at the end of Pigeon Forge a pink motel? Back, you got railroad and you had the pink motel, it had fairies in it.
It's fairyland.
Fairyland,
Yes,
okay.
fairyland, yes,
Well, it had some
yes.
pink stuff in there.
Yeah.
And, well, like you all were saying, Pigeon Forge has really changed. Hey, I know how to go around. Yeah, I can still get there. And I'm sorry.
So does everybody else with GPS.
Well, they're learning it. They don't need to know that. I've done it for a long time. And, and us poor mountain people, I told people, us poor mountain people, I used to wait tables. Us poor mountain people, it's been 20 years, most ever made was $300. We don't even have to steal, they just raise and give it to us, poor mountain people. No, yeah. And you know how many times people have told me that railroad don't exist? I'll show you the picture. Thank you.
Well, thank you all. We appreciate y'all coming out today. I want to thank Bill and Bob and Randy for coming out and helping me. I've known them all forever and ever. I want to thank my beautiful wife, Mary Ann, for letting me come out and play with y'all today. And enjoy the rest of Wilderness Wildlife Week. There's a lot of wonderful things here to see. You'll see me around. I'll be here about every day.